Yo, what is up guys? In this video I'm going to be sharing with you some crucial tips and information you need to know if you want to become a better fighter this season. I've got multiple different strategies ranging from how to read the pace of a fight to also how you should play within your fights in a game scenario. These tips will help you in the upcoming solo and duo cash cups for the rest of this season. If you do enjoy and find this video helpful, please do drop a like and subscribe as we begin to close in on 20,000 subscribers. Let's get straight on into today's video. Okay, so the first point I want to talk about is reading your opponents within a fight. Now, if you are somewhat of a decent player, you should possess the skill that whenever beginning a fight with the opponent, you're able to read exactly whether they are a good or a bad player. Now, why is this important, you ask? Well, this is important because it allows you to decide exactly how you play the fight and whether you should play it in an aggressive or defensive manner, and I will cover that later on in today's video. Now, an example of being able to read your opponent might be, for example, let's say you tag your opponent for 45 damage with the Monarch pistol, which is a pretty average way to start an engagement this season. Well, does your opponent immediately start panic building? Does he place walls and stairs in places that he shouldn't, as well as not having a cone in his box? If he does, these are signs of a not so good player, so you can decide to apply constant pressure to your opponent in this fight to make them panic, and then eventually they'll make that crucial mistake which can lead to you winning the fight. However, if you open the engagement with a 45 damage tag and your opponent immediately makes multiple boxes correctly, like the snail technique I've shown in previous videos for example, and looks for an opportunity to deal opposing damage back onto you, then this might be a sign that the player you're fighting is a bit better and more experienced. Therefore, you need to think about how you approach the fight and whether you need to approach the fight differently. Being able to read your opponent is crucial when deciding which fights are and aren't worth taking and how you're going to approach your fights within a game scenario. Now, next up I want to talk about something crucial within fights, which is deciding whether you're going to play aggressively or defensively. So point 2 is going to be about playing aggressively. Now, if you become good at aggressive fighting, it can not only benefit your game by allowing you to get more kills, but also help you to benefit by lowering the amount of time which you actually spend within a fight. Now, you see, really long and drawn out fight that often happen in solo victory cups, for example, actually don't really benefit anyone, not even really the player that wins the fight. This is because more often than not, both players have expended all their materials and heals, so when the time the fight is over, you're pretty much shambles, and a third party can roll around and easily clean up the fight. Now, the first step to mastering playing aggressive is getting good opening damage to start the fight, like I spoke about in my last point. This is because it can already allow you to be on the front foot within the fight, which means you can play the more confident version of you, and your opponent therefore will more likely to be a bit more scared, and this will help you to close out the fight quicker. Now, many of you probably make the mistake of just straight aim dueling your opponent when trying to get this opening damage to start off the fight, but this is actually a bad idea, because often when you do this you end up taking lots of damage back, which then means that you can't capitalize on the damage you have just dealt to your opponent, because actually he's hit you just as much back. It's important that when you are trying to get this opening damage onto your opponent, you're ensuring you're using smart, advantageous right hand peeks to get your opening damage, as this being onto your enemy without taking any damage back. This allows you then, once you have this opening damage, to play aggressive, which then fully relies on your ability to apply constant pressure to your opponent throughout the engagement through the use of your spray weapons, or you keeping your crosshair on the enemy at all time, allowing you to keep tabs on where your enemy is within the fight and keep that pressure on them. You see, as soon as you tag your opponent at the start of the fight, they are on the back foot, and you need to make sure that you constantly don't give your opponent the chance to box up and heal up, because this will allow them to get back into the fight. You need to capitalize on that health advantage and high confidence that you got from getting that opening damage to close out the fight as quick as possible. So next up now for point number 3, it's important that I now mention how to play defensively in a fight. Now, it's inevitable in a game of Fortnite that you are going to take some damage. So now I'm going to talk you through the correct way to play defensively when you're the victim of that opening damage, which I've spoken about for the whole video. I like to think that there is 2 key options you can take when you are this victim. Now, the first one is to simply slow down the fight. Now, your opponent's main goal in the fight is going to be keeping constant pressure on you. So if you can use like the snail technique, for example, and create multiple boxes like a 2v2 to fight from, this allows you to control the pace of the fight and make sure that your opponent isn't able to eliminate you quickly. Now, from these boxes you can place smart right hand peeks to deal opposing damage onto the opponent, which could then lead to them disengaging or turning the fight into your favour because you've just damaged them, and you can switch up the tempo and all of a sudden play aggressively. As well as this, when you are firing from boxes, it's much harder for your opponent to keep tabs on where you are, so this gives you a little bit of an advantage in the fight. Now, that's the first option, but what is the second option? Well, the second option I want to talk about is by showing extreme confidence to your enemy. Now, what I mean here is that even though you have just been tagged at the beginning of the engagement, you have to act confident. Now, this could be by taking height or looking for opposing damage straight back onto your opponent quickly instead of taking the time to heal. This has a massive impact on your opponent because they don't expect you to play confidently, as they are the ones that just tagged you, so it makes the opponent more likely to respect you and believe that you're a good player. You see, giving yourself this psychological advantage in a fight over your enemy is actually such a crucial factor when trying to win more fights in your solo cash cup games, for example. Okay, so now I want to cover my fourth point. Now, this might be a little controversial, but I need you guys to just give me a chance. Point 4 is about losing fights being actually quite important. Now, I know immediately you're going to be thinking, what on earth are you talking about? Now, before you click off the video, please do give me a chance and let me explain. You see, each fight is an experience and a learning curve which you can use to help improve and learn to fight better. The best pro players in the world that are insane at fighting, like Peterbot, Vico, Vino, have all lost many fights to get to where they are. Pro players are able to quickly adapt to changing situations within a fight, which may cause actually many of us that aren't pros to die. Now, the reason for this is because pros have undoubtedly been in that exact situation before and are able to make the necessary quick decisions to get themselves out of it, and this is because the amount of hours pros have spent in creative and ranked honing their fighting skills against better players is more than the rest of us. Like with everything in life, the person that spends and dedicates the most time to training a particular skill, whether this be fighting in Fortnite or training for a football game, for example, will become the best at it because they have the most experience. Now, what I don't want to say is that this doesn't mean that you're screwed if you can't play the game 10 hours a day. It just comes down to you using the time which you're online effectively and usefully. This could be W keying everyone you see in rank, for example, and then going into replays to review the mistakes which you made that led to you losing that final 1v1. Or for example, when your friends that are worse than you ask you to come online and 1v1 them, whilst I know it's great fun and it's important that you guys play with your friends, it's also important that you realise that you're only going to improve off of fighting people that are better than you, so make sure you 1v1 that are better than you. I could use the example that you will learn much more from just a singular fight against one better player than you would 100 fights just killing AIs in creative, for example. Dedicate the time necessary to gaining that experience you need to really take your fighting to the next level this season. Now, lastly, for my final point, I want to talk about always being active within your fights and being unpredictable. Now, firstly, let's talk about being unpredictable. Now, this is important because in a fight, your opponent is always going to try and read off of what you do. For example, if he's dropped down on your wall twice and you've made the same window edit, when he drops down for a third time, he's going to expect you to make that window edit again. So try and maybe catch him out with something like a pre-fire to get damage on him, just so he doesn't expect you to do the same thing every single time. If you guys go for the same shot every single time or go for the same angle, this isn't going to work because your opponent's going to do the necessary thing to counter you. So it's important that you try and be unpredictable with what you guys do. Now, the second thing again is always being active, and the reason for this is because it makes it harder for your opponent to track you within a fight. And if your opponent can't correctly track you, they don't know where you are at all times, you guys can look to take them by surprise and get that damage onto them, which then will help you allow you to put that constant pressure onto them, and then they're going to make a mistake and you win the fight. That's how fighting in Fortnite works. Now, that is everything I have to share with you for today's video. I really hope you have enjoyed. If you have, with OG season coming out in just over a month's time at the start of November, please do make sure that you smash that subscribe button. We're closing in on 20k and I'm going to be releasing much more tips content just like this video today. I appreciate you watching. Peace out from me.